Welcome to the Connections Conversation series. We're very pleased to present this talk today on the relationship between fine art and brand communications. It's part of our Connections event that takes place around the world, which is a platform for discovering talent in photography, film, animation, all types of creative expression. So please have a visit of the event after this inspiring conversation. I'm pleased to present the moderator of this talk, Jonathan Wingfield, editor of System Magazine.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Connections talk brought to you by Le Book. So as Michael said, we're going to be discussing over about the next hour a conversation we're going to be having about this evolving relationship between art, fine art, and brand communication. And I think the key word in this obviously is the word evolving. This is not new. This has been going on for decades, but it feels like a long time since Coco Chanel was friends with Jean Cousteau, or Saint Laurent did a Mondrian dress, or Helmut Lang was even sort of appropriating Robert Mapplethorpe imagery for his advertising campaigns. And so what we wanted to do was to bring together three different people from three different fields with three different perspectives and have a conversation about what these sort of collaborations and what it means for the brands, what it means for artists, what it means for consumers, and to understand exactly, fundamentally, what can art do that maybe commercial art cannot, or vice versa. So we're very lucky to have, as I said, three panelists with us today. First of all, we have Victoria BONNAMOUR. And Victoria is the Special Project Director for Dom Pérignon. And then we have Benjamin MILLEPIED, who's obviously a dancer and a choreographer, director of Paris Opera Ballet. And when he's not doing that, he was the co-founder and creative director of the AMOVEO company based in Los Angeles. And then finally, over there, we have Sophie METZKER. Sophie is the International Marketing and Communications Director for KENZO. So what we're going to do, we're going to be asking each three of our panelists to present a project that they've been part of or orchestrated, a collaboration between an artist and a brand. Each of those will last about 5–10 minutes, and then we'll have a broader conversation about all the topics we want to pick up today. And if time allows, then we will open it up to some questions from the audience. So let's start with Victoria. Thank you.
I think I'll start. So, good morning, everybody. To start my presentation, I wanted to launch a little movie just to put you in the mood of this link between art and creation. So as I said, it's very short. It's not the project I'm going to talk about specifically. This was a teaser showing David Lynch when he was working for a collaboration we did with him on his photo shoot for an advertising campaign. But I think it was important to show the artist working in the frame of a brief given by a brand. So just to start and give you some very quick element of context. Dom Pérignon is a worldwide brand, so it's a brand that is present everywhere in the world. It has a certain mythology because Dom Pérignon is a brand stemming from the 17th century. So this mythology, this spirituality around the brand is a key element to understand when we talk about this relationship. And to give you some element of context, Dom Pérignon has this tradition of having collaborations with artists and designers in the 10 or 15 past years. You can see here examples of collaboration with Mark Newson, Martin Zekeli, a designer, Sylvie Fleury, who is a Swiss contemporary artist who designed this glass, And more specifically, I wanted to highlight this collaboration with, not Andy Warhol himself, of course, but the Andy Warhol Foundation. It was a tribute to Andy Warhol, and this was a milestone for the brand in terms of digging deeper this relationship between art and communication. That was 4 years ago. So in this context, what we tried to do in Dom Pérignon is really to build more deeply on this relationship between art and communication, and understand why Dom Pérignon is collaborating, is doing all those limited edition with artists. How does this nourish the brand? And we came from an idea. We came up with an idea, a brand platform that we call the power of creation, because there is a very strong notion of power in Dom Pérignon. The brand is linked to the power of a king from the very beginning of the brand, but also to creation, because the brand Dom Pérignon and the product himself, the champagne, is an act of creation, is a gesture of creation. Because Dom Pérignon is a champagne that is vintage only, and that gives a very strict, a very important constraint in terms of creation, because it means that we need to produce and create the Dom Pérignon style, a champagne style, which is very famous and very demanding, in the frame of what nature brings to us every year. So if nature is very whimsical, if the harvest is bad, we need to take this into consideration, and in this constraint, create a perfect champagne. So this is really, every year, it's a gesture, a human gesture of creation, with a raw material that we can't masterize, that we can't control. This gave our platform, this gave birth to our platform, the power of creation. And this notion of artistic gesture is so strong that it has the capacity to inspire artists very differently, according to what is their field of expertise. And in this context, we met Jeff Koons 2 years ago. So I think, Jonathan, you wanted me to give some concrete elements on how this collaboration works. So when we met Jeff Koons two and a half years ago. So it's 2.5 period of time between the first meeting we had with him and the commercialization of the limited edition. And this was, I think it's a very good example to highlight this relationship between art and communication, because here, Jeff Koons, he chose, when we met him, when we explained what I've just explained about the brands, he chose a specific object, a specific culture in his work that you see here, which is the balloon Venus. So maybe you've seen this balloon Venus in a recent exhibition from Jeff Koons. So why did he choose this specific object and decide to reshape it around our bottle? Because I think he really digested, and that's what it's very interesting here, he digested completely the purpose of the brand and the artistic gesture of the brand. Here you see two images. One is the Champagne vineyards. So it's really the essence of Dom Pérignon, the nature that brings the grapes every year, and it's an artistic gesture, a creation that we've kept from centuries and centuries. And on the other side, you see the genuine inspiration of Jeff Koons for his balloon Venus. This little sculpture, it's called the Venus of Willendorf. It's in Wien, and it's the most ancient representation of divinity that was ever found. It's 22,000 years old. So Jeff Koons really understood that in our brand there is a notion of time. Time is in the equation of the brand, and in his work also time is totally in the equation of what he says and what he creates. He chose this very ancient object and he transformed it with his contemporary vision and with his own style. And that's what we wanted also to bring in this collaboration. And the last point I wanted to highlight, I think that is interesting, is that he didn't choose only to take his sculpture, do a miniature of the sculpture, and then put a Dom Pérignon logo on it, which could have been easy for him and for us. But he reshaped the sculpture around our bottle, transforming it like a protective divinity of our own bottle. So he really, there's a fusion, a merger between the brand and the vision of the artist. And that will be my conclusion, that I think this worked very good. We had a very good success with this collaboration. I think when when you work with an artist as a brand, it must be authentic and genuine. So the artist you choose must have a strong link with the brand, and it must mean something. It must mean something. It must be linked to the DNA of the brand. If you don't do that, maybe it's going to work, but it will stay shallow and superficial, and it won't have this strong impact that you're aiming to. And I'm stopping there.
Okay. Thanks very much, Victoria. Thank you. Next up, we're going to hear from Benjamin MILLEPIED, who's going to be talking about a project he was involved in with the fashion brand Mayet.
So Mayet came to me with the idea of reimagining a défilé, essentially, creating a space to go see the clothes, but first a space that the audience would walk through with potentially a dance element. This is what was discussed. It made a lot of sense because essentially ballet is a craft that with Mayet, with the unexpected, I think the unexpected places that the clothes are created, with the craft behind it, with the idea of mythology that I ended up using in the work. Again, you're talking about the DNA and something that is non-superficial. You know, we had to really sort of find, and it made sense for them to maybe come to me. So here, I'll show you the film and I'll talk a little bit more after. So I envisioned 5 portraits that were displayed in this room as you entered. And the idea was, as I just had worked on Daphnis and Chloe for the Paris Opera, and still was very much inspired by the story. So I wanted to create 5 portraits that would tell the story. So separately, what you just saw is an edit of the 5 portraits. Would tell the story of Daphnis and Chloe in this modern way, but inspired by an ancient story with the grace of ballet, essentially. And I think, you know, again, because of the craft element, because of the tradition, but told in this way that I think people can relate to. A lot of my work is very much, about people and the way they respond to each other, and the human qualities you can see on the stage really fit with what they were looking for. And as an experience, the way that you experience the films is that the slow motion, so every portrait was about 2.5 minutes, and one would lead to another. Not necessarily in order, but you could experience the room and the clothes with really what was a performance that would take about 12 minutes. Yeah.
Thanks very much. And next up. And next up we have Sophie METZKER from KENZO.
So hi everyone. I'm not going to explain for long who's KENZO, but basically what you need to know is that this brand was founded by a fantastic Japanese man named KENZO Takara in '73, based in Paris. And at that time, fashion was very formal. And he came and broke the rules and created what now is basically called the prêt-à-porter, the street prêt-à-porter, and he called it the jungle fever. So he enchanted the street 30 years ago. Then he sold his company to LVMH and left his brand in '99. And from '99 to 4 years ago, the brand completely disappeared. So my job 4 years ago with a big team of highly motivated people was to regenerate that phoenix and bring back the brand from the ashes based on a very, very strong 40-year-old legacy. So we repositioned it around the concept of design to wear. So KENZO is a fashion Parisian brand which shows in Paris and in New York, but when you go into a store, you can afford it. And that's what KENZO Takara brought to fashion 40 years ago, and we re-established this positioning. So it's very important for the rest of the presentation because it's quite a bold statement in fashion today, and the people we are competing with, image-wise, are not at all on the same price ranges. But we want the brand to be in the streets. For that, we brought from New York a very unique duo, Umberto Leon and Carol Lim. They're the founders of Opening Ceremony, which is basically called the American Colette. So a very successful concept store. When you look at what they want to do with KENZO, which are basically the red lines, they wanted to bring culture back to the brand. They wanted to build a new language in fashion. They think accessibility is our luxury, and the Parisian origins are a key element to the brand. So basically, they are the natural, spiritual heirs of KENZO Takada. So this is why Mr. Takada, for the 3rd consecutive season, is coming to our shows, which is a kind of nice bond between history and now. So the objective for the brand was to conquer the market leadership, seduce the new generations, bring desire back to the brand. And for that, we needed to stand out because the money was not huge to invest on the brand. So we went to see crazy people. The Toilet Paper team. Toilet Paper is a new magazine founded by Maurizio Cattelan, Pierpaolo Ferrari, and Nicole Talso, 3 Italian people. So I'm not going to introduce you Maurizio. He left contemporary art exhibitions 3 years ago to create these very controversial projects. And looking at what he was doing, the provocative way, the passion for images, the strong message brought by each image, we thought that we could do something with KENZO because our value were disruption, spontaneity, storytelling, animate a very, very young and playful community of fans and friends, and bring culture back to the brand, and especially a borderless culture, which doesn't mean geographically, but a culture coming from arts, music, dance, movies, and integrate that into the brand. So Toilet Paper was looking for awareness. We were looking for differentiation. And this is where the meeting was quite ideal, because we decided to leverage our common values to create a bold and unique narrative behind the brand imagery. So this is the team. So everyone got along pretty well. It was supposed to be for 1 season, and it lasted 4 seasons, based on a lot of freedom on the Maurizio Catalan side, and a lot of respect for what KENZO was. So the result of the 4th season, you may have seen, season 1, very crazy, surreal visuals, and a lot of visual, which is part of what toilet paper does. So for a brand, it's fantastic, because when you want stories to tell and you have a photographer and a dedicated artistic team able to provide even more than what you expect, it's quite exciting. We launched this collaboration owning a 4th of July party in Paris, because we wanted to say we have American designers in Paris, and we're working with contemporary art people which have never worked for advertising in a fashion company, ever. So we did this amazing party, which set the tone quite clearly. And then we implemented, as we do each time, a very global platform with some very specific season after season. So season 1, we created a Kenzine, a kind of toilet paper KENZO magazine. We developed we launched in worldwide top bookstores. We created a capsule collection with the prints of the campaign, which was sold in 2 days. And we launched on the social media this very weird teaser. Can we see it, please? That was not 1 week before the campaign, 300,000 views on YouTube, and people wondering, what is this? So it was a kind of quick element to create some buzz around the upcoming collaboration. So this is season 2. KENZO had a message. We invested a lot of money in the Blue Marine Foundation charity, a UK foundation, and the message was, please stop overfishing, because if we don't stop the way we fish, in 50 years' time, there will be no more fish in the sea. So, well, toilet paper was very inspired by fish and sea in general. And for the first time, we declined the visuals to all the brand categories. Because we do fashion, but we have licensees who do glasses and kids and watches. And it was the first time the brand was speaking one voice using the same theme. So, of course, we launched the collaboration in Miami during Art Basel, because we wanted to reinforce and leverage this bond we had with contemporary art. So we covered the beaches with the towels presenting the new visuals of the campaign, and we called it Art Towel. And we launched it only on social media. We would propose people to meet the KENZO bus in various Miami locations, and just, you know, to reassure people who think that the bond between online and offline is unclear. At each stop, I had at least 200 people waiting for the KENZO bus. So it was quite an animation. And to try to bring something new compared to the first season, we created a digital store in Le Marais. In 1 week, we had 14,000 people coming to click on the windows, and it was only a social media launch, which seems for me important to remind. So season 3, David Lynch did the scenography of the fall-winter fashion show of KENZO, and he really brought to the brand a kind of freaky, mysterious, 50-years-old Hitchcock kind of mood. And so the interpretation of toilet paper was this one. We worked about a concept of breaking in. Hello? Okay. And again, a 360 plan. And for the first time, a viral movie. We had never developed a movie. So it was helped by Vice too. So this is the breaking in movie. And this is the last season, the one you have on air now. So the brief was Back to the Future. So we created a kind of KENZO planet, and we're taking our clients there and our friend there. Again, all the visuals are in line, and the brand speaks one voice. The communication platform is even more deep than the 3 first seasons. The first reason is we're building a new store concept. We're opening in 1 month in Milan and London, and they're inspired from the universe of toilet paper that they create for the campaign, with a giant sculpture, which is a spaghetti plate for Milan, and the giant fish and chips for London, inspired, of course, by Maurizio Cattelan sculpting talent, and accompanied by pop-up stores all over the world, and an outdoor movie. So for the first time, it's not only a digital web movie, but we're putting it in JFK terminal and use it like an advertising. So this is Back to the Future. So as a conclusion, at least for this collaboration, I think that the success factors, and it's a little bit like you said, Victoria, the collaboration has to be global. It has to be long-lasting, because by the time your clients understand what you're doing, it takes more time than a season. And very often in fashion, we change designer, photographer each season, and just people can't follow what you want to express. It has to be meaningful. Very consistent, win-win. Basically, toilet paper was unknown, and after KENZO collaboration, they did New York Times advertising, and they were in M Le Monde representing the M page. So everyone, both KENZO and them, gained a lot out of it. And because no one mentions, but I have no problem saying it, it's about business, and it was an incredible business leverage. Thanks to this campaign, we earned the Best Fashion Campaign Award from Business of Fashion. We were awarded by Daily Front Row in the US last September. We now have 2.7 million followers on 9 social networks. And honestly, this campaign helped us boom the interest and the engagement towards the brand. E-commerce is the second store in the world for KENZO. And we gain 50% new customer each year, and 60% of them are below 30 years old. So if you want to go digital, you have to be able to provide brand content and brand stories. And for us, the toilet paper saga was an amazing story to tell. So it's about art and commerce. So it's not my logo. Art plus commerce is on the toilet paper site. So the message for the future is what Umberto and Carol always say: go the extra mile. It's never crowded. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Sophie. So we've heard about the 3 different projects, and the first question I had, principally it's to Victoria and to Sophie, obviously, because you both represent working with brands. Brands like Dom Pérignon and KENZO have limitless possibilities of what it is you can do in terms of how you choose to market and to communicate the brands. And I'm very interested in to understand the conversations that you had right at the very start that led to saying to yourselves, okay, well, we want to choose art, and then we want to choose this particular project. So maybe, Victoria, if you'd like to start, just tell me about the very, very first conversation you had internally at Dom Pérignon that said, okay, we want to really sort of push our association with art, and then how you got to the collaboration with Jeff Koons?
I think, as I said in the introduction, the collaboration we did with the Andy Warhol Foundation a few years ago was really a key milestone that enabled us to grasp better what was our relationship between art and creation. Because I think it encapsulated the fact that Dom Pérignon, in a way, is a pop brand in the artistic sense, because it's a cult object, it's a mythical object, but it's still an object of consumption. And in that sense, it has this pop dimension to be glorified, that can be glorified as a piece of art and as a work of art. And understanding that really helped us choosing the kind of artist we wanted to work with, the kind of scenography, the kind of visual effect we wanted to have around Dom Pérignon. So the choice of Jeff Koons was natural after that, because he's also in this legacy of pop, in the legacy of the Duchamps and Warhol, etc. And in his work also, Jeff Koons does it the other way around. He takes objects from the everyday life and he promotes them and he glorifies them in really a giant and very big piece of art. So it was exactly the other way around. So I think that's why the meeting between him and the brand was so natural and efficient the first time we met. And it brings me back to what I said in the conclusion. I think it can work and it can be efficient business-wise, as Sophie says, if it makes sense. If you sense it immediately. The collaboration goes well, the creation goes very well. There's a choice of the artist that doesn't bring any problem. It seems completely natural. And because consumers and the people who drink Dom Pérignon receive it, and even if they can be disturbed by a visual effect, it's so linked to the DNA of the brand that it's not a problem. On the opposite, it engages people better, further. And I think showing what Sophie just showed, the key word also is consistency. There is a lot of consistency of the artist that you chose and the message that the brand wants to. So the key element would be to understand your brand very well, saying what are the genes of my brand, what is really the message of my brand, what is the identity of my brand. Once you've got this very clear, then everything is really seamless and easy.
Great. And Sophie, can you tell me about, talk me through the very first conversation that you remember having internally at KENZO, where you thought, okay, well, we want to collaborate with an artist, and what led you to choose Maurizio Cattelan and toilet paper? I'm guessing that came from the designers as well, right?
Well, I mean, Umberto, Carreau and I work on a daily basis together, so they had a very clear idea of what they wanted to do with KENZO in the first place. But they don't, I mean, they choose a person, they choose a personality. They think they can do anything with someone that has talent and that fits well with them. And then they're happy to be surprised. So we don't come with a brief. We just say, we're KENZO, this is who we are, these are our values. We have like a young crowd behind us. We want to bring culture back to the brand. We're cool, we want to be in the streets, we want to do amazing shows, but we want people to wear our clothes in the streets. So we want that connection, and we want interesting stories to tell. So the brief is quite vague, actually. And the first time, for instance, when I joined, we called Jean-Paul Goutte directly and we said, hi, you used to work with Kenzo Takada. We would like to pay tribute to the heritage of the brand. So it would be cool to work with you. And well, we just want to say we're like global and mixed. And he came with the X signature. And it really launched the brand in a very strong way. And for Maurizio, we decided we love our images. And we would like, in one image, to encapture the brand message. And it's very hard in fashion. And stand out from like the pretty girl with a pretty dress, and you turn the pages and you could like remove the brand, and many brands look alike, actually. So how to stand out and still fit in at the same time? And they had a very, very specific surreal territory, a bit sexual, a bit trashy, So we just said, oh, we're KENZO, so we're not on that territory, but still we would like to say this through one image. And then we'll let them work in total freedom. And this is how we saw that they would come up with, I don't know, 25 shots a day. Very generous. So we're a generous brand and we found very generous people. But it was more because Umberto and Carol were interested by why has Maurizio Catenan left contemporary art? And then we started the conversation. And it was supposed to last for like 2 seasons, and we couldn't leave. So now we're leaving to a new adventure.
Benjamin, from your perspective as a creative, could you tell me about the first time you were contacted, and you started a conversation with the people from Mayet? And what was it they were, what were they saying to you? What do you think they were looking to get from a collaboration with you, where they could go to a commercial artist or many different sort of channels of communication? What do you think they were looking to?
I think the ethereal quality of ballet, again, what I was discussing earlier is the lightness and so forth is something that they were looking for. But I don't know, I think essentially, because I've done a few collaborations like these, and they always started very organically. I mean, mainly the biggest one is with Van Cleef and Arpels, who has been, we've been working with LA Dance Project for a few years. Really, they had a history with ballet. Balanchine created a ballet called Jewels that were inspired by the Stones a long time ago. They make ballerinas and so forth. So there was, sort of a genuine possibility in a collaboration and maybe recreating on the same, even though, we've decided to recreate this ballet new called Gems, inspired by the Stones, but doing it today means not to do it something literal. First ballet is emeralds and so forth. You can still be inspired by the jewels and create something completely modern. And I chose to work on the first ballet with Barbara Kruger and on the second with Liam Gillick. And this is something that is, I feel very fortunate because I've given complete, complete freedom in these projects. They're not. You could say it's also mécénat, or sort of being underwritten by, but it has a continuity with the history of the brand. I've made these ballets. We premiered one in Art Basel. The company invites their clients and so forth. So there's, in the end, it's interesting how all the lines are blurring. But what makes all this possible is that the artist, whether it's Dom Pérignon or you're talking about KENZO, these that created these brands were interested in the arts overall, inspired by whether it's cinema or dance or or visual arts. So in a way, that to have all of these artists now come and come up with ideas that are, because essentially what do we want? We want an emotional experience. We want to be attracted by something. So you go and you look for the people that are right, that have a connection to what you're trying to expose. And create a really fine, interesting, emotional experience for people. So that's what today makes all of this possible. And in a way, for an artist like me and others, it's opportunities to be in touch with more of an audience. Today, I think about that when I curate for Paris Opera and the artists that I bring together. And in fact, I'm collaborating with a designer, graphic artist that's done 3 of my ballets on an interactive experience in Hong Kong. So, but to us, it's just another opportunity to create something of a performance and reach an audience that we wouldn't necessarily reach before. So all of that is always interesting. Again, it has to be connect in a genuine way. It has to gel. It has to.
And Sophie, I was interested, you said earlier, sort of very honestly, you said, look, ultimately the bottom line is this is a commercial venture. It's got to make money. It's got to work for the brand. Were there instances when, where you can sit in a boardroom and think, well, let's collaborate with an artist that will have a good sort of payoff and so forth. But in terms of the actual execution, did you find, did it go smoothly? Was it better than you expected? Were there moments where you think, okay, well, actually we're working with an artist and we've got to respect their sort of, their ways of working that may not necessarily be aligned with the commercial sort of ambitions of a company like KENZO?
You always find a way. I mean, if the artist understands the brand, I think our duty as employers of the artist is to respect his freedom. Otherwise, you lose the essence of what you've been looking for and the spontaneity and then, well, I mean, there are basic things. When you shoot a dress, it's better than it's a dress you're going to find in the stores. It's as basic as that. For the rest, I'm convinced that if the image is good and the message passes on to the customer, that's enough. It's not more complicated than that. So it can happen. You meet with someone. It happened to us. I mean, we met with people to organize our shows. They didn't get the brand essence and what we wanted to do. So you see it immediately, basically. But not when we start to work. It's because the relationship is there, the bond is there, and we're all on the same page.
Okay. Victoria, I mean, one of the things that Sophie had mentioned was that when they approached toilet paper was relatively unknown, and that KENZO was a fantastic vehicle to, as you know, you said it was a win-win situation. Approaching someone like Jeff Koons, who himself is already a brand, right? He's a huge brand, Jeff Koons, probably the biggest art brand that's out there. Tell me about sort of the working relationship with Jeff Koons and obviously sort of Dom Perignon and Jeff Koons and Dom Perignon and who sort of led the collaboration.
Okay, so I think it was first an encounter, so a human contact between Jeff Koons and one of our enologists, chef de cave. They met in an art fair dinner in New York. They were at the same table. They were neighbors, so they had a very good fit. They discussed, and Jeff Koons didn't know him before, and the next day he invited him to visit his studio. So we had thought about Jeff Koons like for years before and didn't know how to approach it, and it was not the good timing. So we really built on this opportunity and called him back and say, would you be ready to receive us and we can meet and talk to you about the brand? He said, okay. So we went there, me and my chef de cave, and while my chef de cave was talking about all that I explained before about the harvest, about the fact to be vintage only, about the role of nature, I think it's really this, I sensed during the meeting that he was really interested by all this organic linked to nature that the product has. It comes from nature, it has this deep constraint. And nature, all the organic dimension, is also something that is very important in Jeff Koons' work. So that's the first element. The second element he told us is that he said that he really liked the Andy Warhol limited edition that we had done before he had seen it. He liked it because he is also in this pop kind of dimension I explained before. And I think Jeff Koons, as an artist, as you say, he's a brand, he's the biggest contemporary artist today. He was interested in bringing more his art and his vision to the public, because even if Dom Perignon is a luxury brand, it has a very large audience. And when you're Jeff Koons, even if you're the biggest contemporary artist, ask someone in the street, he not necessarily know Jeff Koons. Probably he knows KENZO more than Jeff Koons. I mean, you know, he's not. He doesn't have this big audience. And in his pop approach and way of thinking, I think he was interesting in that.
Just to add quickly, there's something really interesting to having the restriction or the constraints of a project. You know, an artist always, you know, you have your carte blanche and you work, but it didn't always used to be like that. You know, if you think of Bach making, you know, cantatas for church or, you know, something specific, it's also a way of a practice that is interesting for an artist. And to say this is, you have to come up with something with these limitations and these ideas, and that's something that I think is, in a way, refreshing, that artists tend to very much like.
How do you feel, Benjamin? You know, obviously, from your perspective, you're involved in many different projects, of which the end goal generally is to create something that's memorable and stands up. And how do you feel about, or how did you feel when you were working on these particular collaborations, about being involved in something where, for some of the people, part of that equation was the end goal was a commercial, you know, was a commercial kind of ambition. Does that change the way you think? Does it make you sort of approach the work differently?
Yeah, but again, I've been very lucky with the amount of freedom, and the whole idea with Mayette was also to have this. I feel like the project has total artistic integrity. For me, it was an opportunity to create an installation, make another film, create something with certain finesse, work with London grammar. I mean, it's a dance piece. Right. So I feel, there was no sense that, and also even their approach. It's not the kind of in-your-face approach. It's the way that they design the experience and so forth. And it's also a really interesting brand that the craft, the way that they go commission, the clothing in these really unexpected places all over the world and so forth. So I felt, this was something that I'm really interested in. So no, that's sort of the perspective.
Sophie, I have a question for you. What do you think from the consumer's perspective? What do you think that a consumer now, compared to say 10, 15, 20 years ago, now, what does that symbolize, an artistic collaboration between an artist and a brand? How does the consumer actually kind of, pick this up, this information that you're putting out there, and consider it in a different way than if you were to do a somewhat more conventional, sort of marketing strategy using commercial art?
I think we're all interested in newness and being surprised. So bring people an unexpected thing is something we try to do with this brand. Kenzo Takada used to show in circus, in the streets, pave the Place Vendôme with red poppies. So in his time, he was very theatrical. He used to do stuff that fashion world didn't do. So we have this heritage, to carry on, but with new media. When you have a limited budget, digital is like a dream. It's because you hear what people say. And if you hear well, you just give them what they want to have. So a brand is not just a brand, it's a complete lifestyle. It's a point of view on fashion, of course, but it can be a point of view on fooding, on traveling, on music, and I think because Umberto and Carol are American, they used to have this like crowd of talented friends all around them, and honestly, this is where marketing can, leverage the friends of those people, because I didn't pay David Lynch to do the scenography of my show, and I was like a little girl on the phone, like, okay, it's for free, okay, thank you. I mean, so people like you or my designers, they have this bunch of talents around, and my job was to exploit it as much as I could in the most elegant and subtle way. Of course, I mean, the idea of my designers when they shoot a campaign is like a campaign with the clothes, but my job is to say, okay, we need a movie because we need to go viral, and why don't we do a pop-up store, because I want to bring people from web to offline and see if it works. And so this is where, you build upon something that, I mean, I never discuss figures with Umberto and Carol. But my job at the end of the day is turn these artistic pieces into something very global and very consistent and generate turnover. And for that, I have to engage the crowd, which is following the brand. And they want to know more about the collaboration, and everyone loved because it was like so, unexpected in fashion to have like a dog covered with tiger prints on a scarf and saying, oh, this is a scarf visual. And, you bring people to think about that visual, because things are not first degree. There's a second degree behind. So if you want to go deeper, I can take you deeper. And the same for Art Basel. So we try to give a first impression, which is easy to understand, but there's more behind. And I think that if people follow us without having to pay for fans, it's because what's behind is interesting. What's behind your movie is interesting. So if you don't know Daphne St. Chloe, you can dig. If you don't want to dig, you just watch the movie, the music is nice, and the color is beautiful, but you can go deeper. And I think the strength of Kenzo today, and the fact that people carry around giant logos when, I mean, logo is not the top of fashion, it's because they want to be part of it. And if they want to be part of it, it's because we have, at our level, achieved to build a lifestyle. So they want to connect with their lifestyle, and that goes far beyond fashion. This is, I think, what they got with this collaboration.
Okay, thank you. Victoria, one thing I wanted to know was, similarly, what did you get back from the consumers? From the consumer's perspective, Dom Perignon is a champagne. It's known around the world, and it has certain values that are expressed and so forth. And what was the feedback from the kind of sort of global consumers all of a sudden of this collaboration with Jeff Koons? Does it touch all of your consumer base? Is the aim that you're going to touch only 5% of sort of opinion leaders within your consumer base? What was the sort of feedback on the rapport with the consumers?
I think from our usual consumer base, we had a very good feedback, but this operation really enabled us to touch other types of consumer that we don't have an immediate access to, because we touch people very interested in arts, collectors, people that were just dazed by this Jeff Koons objects, even if they didn't know Jeff Koons before. So it really enabled us to it was even a surprise effect. We didn't know, we didn't think it would be so big in terms of recruitment of new people. And so this is very interesting, because to build back on what Sophie just said and your question about what a consumer gets from this artistic collaboration, I think an artist, when you work with an artist, and once again, when it's the good fit between the brand and the artist you choose, the artist has this ability to stretch you out of your borders. And it brings the brand, he brings the brand beyond its own limits. So when a collaboration like that is well done and the artist is the good one for you, you have an access to something surprising, unexpected, because I think you bring a supplement of soul, you bring an emotion that you can't define upfront, an emotion that you don't give in the brief or when you meet the artist, I want to create this emotion, because you don't control that. It's really what the artist is going to bring. So in terms of pure business marketing strategy, it enabled us to recruit new consumers, but I think it went way beyond that.
Thank you. Now, one of the things I saw in your presentation, Sophie, was the presentation that you guys, or the launch that you did at the event you did at Miami Art Basel. Now, I think Miami Art Basel is such a brilliantly symbolic kind of event to reflect this evolving relationship between artists and brands. Because over the last sort of 15 years in which it's been in existence, it's gone from being very much sort of an art industry event to something now which is very much a platform for brands to sort of present themselves and to obviously present the collaborations that they've been doing with artists. And obviously when you go to that particular event, 3, 4 day, 5 day event now, it's rammed with brands. And it's almost, you said the collaboration with toilet paper was unexpected, but you almost kind of think when you go to someone like Art Basel that it's to be expected now that a brand does a collaboration with an artist, puts it out there during the sort of Art Basel event, or FIAC or Freeze or one of these. So within that landscape and that environment, how do these collaborations actually kind of break through and to become more memorable rather than simply being another art brand collaboration?
Well, because we're off the walls. I mean, we're not in the Art Basel structure. We're on all the beaches, so people were like, what are they doing here? So we did a kind of guerrilla launch. I had this bus going around Miami, and it was only on the social networks, and people started talking about it. So, but it was funny to see that the buzz was growing day after day, because every day we would animate a beach, and we had a KENZO plane, a KENZO yellow plane above the beaches, saying like, meet the KENZO bus at 5, with a banner. So we caught people in a very specific way that none of the brands are doing, whether they're officially at Art Basel, whether that year it was like the Louis Vuitton introducing the Charlotte Perriand house. So it was, everything is very organized, but very few brands do like off things in such a close and disruptive way. So, and people like to laugh, I mean, it was funny. It was funny, it was fun. We would display all those towels. We took like 5 minutes on the beach with all the people, dressed on beachwear, explaining who was KENZO, and then we would say, okay, now you can pick one, and they were like rushing. So we have like crazy images of you know, people having fun with the brand. So it was a kind of unofficial way to be there. And at the same time, I had a constraint too, you know. I wanted to do a party, a cool one with Maurizio, but he didn't want to see anyone from that field again. So it was hard to do a big thing without Maurizio and without my designers and still bring people. But we did it. It was interesting.
Benjamin, how do you, you know, in your work across all the fields and all the different projects you do you make a distinction between the work that you do in collaboration with a brand and work that's sort of in a more closed, contextualized, creative field?
No, I think I approach every project the same way. You know, and to go back a little bit, you know, because from my perspective, working with cultural institutions, one thing to mention is really that today you cannot have a cultural institutions, especially true in America, but even here, without brands, without the support of brands. In fact, LA Dance Project, you know, since there's no government funding and it's all private funding and so forth, which is getting more and more difficult in America, is in large part funded by Vingt Different Appels and our collaborations. And it's even true today of Paris Opera. I mean, no brand wants to be associated with an institution with just having a sort of a logo on a page anymore. And the kind of, you know, again, clarity and genuine, you know, artistic jumelage, you know, is what makes sense. And we're right now with Paris Opera, which we're starting to collaborate, you know, with the brand and figuring out how we're going to tell the story, you know, within the next few years. But truly, it's actually, you cannot do without. Brands are more and more financing not only, you know, projects that are very specific, but just cultural institutions as well.
So you're almost saying that part of the role of brands is almost to become sort of a patron of the arts, as they were from like 17th century.
No, there's actually creating the LA Dance Project. We wouldn't exist without the sponsors, and it's just been a very to navigate for me between these projects and, you know, understanding, you know, how brands, you know, think about going out to the audience in a kind of very successful way and specific way is also interesting for me to think about how to bring ballet to people and opera and so forth. So it's really all the, you know, all these borders are sort of crossing. You see the Philharmonie doing this David Bowie, you know, installation very, very successfully. Everybody's sort of touching on to, you know, you have to rethink how to get to the audience. And it's the same in a way for you as it is for someone who's working on opera and ballet. So all of it is really interesting. And again, it makes sense because it's all of these different art forms inspire, you know, the work that I do as an artist and as, you know, and is true of many others.
So as Van Cleef is obviously a great example, you know, they're a somewhat passive patron of the arts, and that's their sort of rapport with the opera. And obviously, Maurizio Cattelan and Toilet Paper and KENZO is extremely collaborative. And Victoria, whereabouts do you see sort of the collaboration that you did with Jeff Koons? Was it simply was it a question of we want to get in an artist because of their credibility and because of the reach in different fields that they have? Did you want it to be sort of very much a very collaborative thing, or were you happy for it to be slightly passive and to become patrons of the arts?
I think we are more really in this collaborative kind of way, really thinking deeply that art can bring something to the brand. We're not in this mood of becoming patron of the arts, because our platform is power of creation, but in a large way. We're interested in creators rather than artists for artists. So any kind of field of creation, but it can be also gastronomy, as long as we're working with somebody that has a milestone gesture, that has really created a new language, be it in terms of gastronomy, in terms of visual arts, in terms of fine arts, in terms of dance, why not? I mean, any kind of creative gesture that can meet our own original creative gesture. So it's more than how can we enrich each other? How can we bring something different, more emotion, more experience, rather than becoming a brand that's doing a lot of mecenat. It's not really the philosophy here.
Even though, in a way, you are a patron of the arts,
yeah.
when you give an artist an opportunity to do something like that, you know, maybe Jeff Koons doesn't need patronage, but there's other people who actually, you know, it might allow you to do something that, you know, have more time for something that really, you know, would be more difficult to do. So it's
totally true, but then I think it's like it's a different approach, and it's a different philosophy if you're doing that for the love of art and the conviction that art is going to bring something to the brand, rather than a more corporate approach, which is totally necessary also, but that can be more a global corporate approach, sponsoring the arts in a larger way. Yeah.
So we're obviously today we've been talking about the evolving nature of this relationship between brands and art and artists, and you know, we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't talk about obviously how the digital world and how sort of technology in these days is influencing the ways that these collaborations are taking place. Sophie, it's probably appropriate to start with you and the collaboration between KENZO and toilet paper. Could you tell me a little bit about how from the very start the digital sort of element and digital language was sort of part of that collaboration and how it influenced it?
The digital language is part of KENZO from the beginning. So I mean, the marketing. Do you think this
collaboration sort of actually brought that to the fore?
It helps reach more people at a very low budget, because I mean, I would love to put those movies in a cinema, but I cannot afford a cinema campaign. But when I know that 300,000 people or 500,000 people have seen that movie on YouTube, so okay, it's cool, and it cost me 5,000 euros. So it just how you do your best to meet your objectives as a brand by using what your clients are used to use. I mean, asking, does digital is integrated in the marketing strategy of KENZO when you know that 80% of my consumers are below 40 or even below 30? It's not even a question. I mean, Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen whatever, they shop online, they search for information online, they talk online about the brand, they exchange, they decide who you are at the end of the day. So we provide the kind of mobile tools or immediate tools or, you know, moments and emotions they're used to get from the way they seize the world of brands.
Okay. And Benjamin, obviously, you know, dance traditionally was a medium that one went to go to the opera to go and experience it and so forth. And do you feel that the collaborations that you've been doing and the sort of the digital possibilities have provided you with a much sort of broader platform to get, as you said earlier, to get sort of dance out to the people?
Well, dance fortunately is incredibly viral. I think an interesting figure is that Kickstarter, you know, 40% of projects on Kickstarter get funded, 70% of dance projects on Kickstarter get funded. And I think that's just because dance is something that speaks to everyone. That's easy to, you know, sort of easy to understand, and you can sort of pass on emotions of very different kinds through very short footage. So that's really something for me to explore, and you know, which I am now with, again, with the Alley Dance Project and the Paris Opera. But it's very, you know, it's very exciting in the way to bring you know, ballet to the masses. We have, I mean, one thing that's going to happen now is the whole idea of showing things live online. You know, like I think Periscope is about to launch, which I've been using lately, and broadcasting my rehearsals live on the application. And it's really, I mean, actually I broadcasted Swan Lake from, you know, a really interesting perspective a few nights ago, and it's just incredibly touching to have people that are on the other side of the world in a hospital, on the road, going on the side of the road to like watch and be watching Swan Lake from this completely unlikely perspective. I think that's going to be an interesting new way to sort of, again, share an experience in this completely immediate and emotional way. So I'm very interested in digital media and how to you know, and again, it's, you know, the constriction, like finding interesting ideas and you know, pairing artists, taking dance on the street, which I do all the time. I mean, there's so many ways to, and that's all fun. That's why I don't, you know, Mayet was a completely interesting challenge and a wonderful opportunity for me to also grow personally with a new experience.
Great. Well, so we have to wrap this up now. I have one last question for each of you, very briefly. Other than the projects, obviously, that you've been personally associated with, could you each give me another sort of art/brand collaboration that's been out there, that's happened, you know, recently or many years ago, that sort of really touched you personally, that you thought was successful and great? Sophie, you want to start with you?
There are many, as we were discussing before, but I used to work in Champagne before fashion, and I would work for a brand called Piper Heidsieck. And I discovered in the Champagne history that dukes in the 19th century would come to Paris, to Maxime's, to see those lovely French courtesans. And there was a kind of habit to drink champagne in the shoe of your courtesan. And I thought it was like a very nice, hot and sexy idea to bring back to life. So I called Christian Louboutin and I said, you know what? I have a bottle, the label is red, and the rest of the glass is black, and you have shoes. Most of them are red and black. Shall we do something together? Could you do something for Piper? And he said, yes, I'm going to do a crystal stiletto, and you can drink out of it. So it was like the stiletto flute. We launched it in 2009. And I don't know, it was insane. People got crazy. We launched it only viral and in like big Lavinia or nice enology stores. And we sold 5,000 coffrets for Piper Brut that usually costs 25 euros at 350 euros in 1 week. And voila, it was a nice collaboration because it related to a champagne tradition deeply anchored in the champagne, you know, story, but revamped by two red and, you know, appealing brands, and it built a very meaningful story. So it's always the same thing, you know, consistency.
Okay. Great, thank you. Benjamin, do you have one? Go on, Victoria. Do you have a collaboration in mind?
Yeah, well, it's not really a collaboration, but what I have in mind is all what happened in Wien at the beginning of the century, well, last century. In 1900, or the secession movement in Wien, because really the intention of the artists at that time, the artists like Klimt, were really to reduce this gap between what we call decorative arts and the big arts, classical academic art with a big A. So I think it was really for me it's a constant inspiration, this movement and this aesthetics. But I think it was really the beginning of arts coming out of this strict classical sphere for upper people, and really melting in today's world and bridging this link between the arts and everyday life. So like, as if art was starting to be sprayed all over the place from this moment on. So that's what I would quote.
Benjamin, do you have something?
You're much more knowledgeable in this field than I am. No, I think one more thing to point out is the idea that I think, in a way, as I'm seeing now with Paris Opera and I've developed with LA Dance Project, is the idea that cultural institutions are brand, you know, and are going to have in the future, in a way, to develop business to support themselves, as we're now working with sponsors to help finance these institutions. For example, with our dance project, we're now launching at Colette next month a line of clothing that is designed by the artists that work with our dance project. So, but in terms of, again, it's just interesting to think about the blur that is happening, and in a way, just because of the financial conditions of the arts. But really thinking about, and this is because it's my responsibility now, running these places, to really think about how to think about, you know, financing the future, and I think we'll see that more and more.
Great, that's a great way to end. Thanks very much, Victoria, Benjamin, and Sophie. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Please enjoy the show.